Great to have you on our show.
Good morning.
I have to tell you, your personal story about the recent riots in London, titled, "It Will Never Happen Here." I mean, it was compelling and an eye-opener, I think, to anybody who reads it, about what happens when law-abiding citizens lose their rights and have to depend on their government.
I just appreciate the NRA giving me the platform to be able to tell my story. I hope that it came across as being as valuable a message as I feel it is.
Yeah, because when you saw those people defenseless against mobs of looters and thugs, and the police told to stand down, I mean, was it like watching your worst fears come true when you were living in London?
Oh, absolutely. It just makes you feel sick to see civilian law-abiding citizens that are at the mercy of criminals and police completely neutered to be able to do anything. The police themselves were in a position where they were prevented from responding appropriately to the criminals that were rioting.
In your story, you actually said you were embarrassed to watch this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you see, British citizens standing there and being accosted in the street and mugged and without any type of resistance whatsoever, giving up, the contents of their backpacks they were carrying, emptying their wallets, giving up, jackets, clothes that are being stolen from these people without any resistance at all. It is sickening. But I blame the media primarily, which has brainwashed the British citizen into believing that they should never resist. They should never resist. They should never resist. It's appalling.
Mm-hmm.
It's appalling. And it is a public perception which has been facilitated by many years of media brainwashing. And when you look at how vulnerable people are when there is no concealed carry, it's appalling.
It really is. I mean, when you realize, and I was over there and I talked to so many of the people in the stores, many of them had nothing. Those who had a baseball bat, some of them used rolling pins, and they said, the police were standing out there and they were like, help me, and there was no help.
No, they didn't do anything. They did absolutely nothing. The police were just as afraid themselves because the culture over there has evolved into something where I believe people are taught to become victims, and I just say no to that. That's a disgusting thing.
And one thing you point out, and again, and I think many of the people, the gun owners that I talked to over there were the first to admit, we made the mistake. We didn't speak up, we didn't fight, but they also point out they really weren't unified like you see with the NRA.
The NRA is the greatest defender for the Second Amendment. It is an incredible organization that unifies shooters, whether they are black gun shooters, whether they're black powder shooters, whether they are bow hunters. It doesn't make any difference to the NRA. The NRA opens their arms to all and supports the rights of all through hunting and through Second Amendment protection, through lobbying on Capitol Hill. It is so important that we, as gun owners, support the NRA. It's important that we, when we're in ranges, we talk to the people around us and we ask them, are you an NRA member? And if not, why not? Do you understand that your rights have no protection without the NRA?
But you were there, actually, in England when they first started confiscating the guns, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
I mean, you really didn't have a choice.
Yeah, you do have a choice. The choice is give up your guns or go to jail. Mm-hmm. And because of registration, they know exactly where every single firearm is. It takes a great deal of time to enact the plans that were enacted in the UK. And I always say that before confiscation comes registration. And any government across the world will always give you the same line about how we're just trying to keep the guns out of the hands of the criminals. We're looking to protect the populace. It's not true. Registration is all about having a list so that when that day comes, that they can push that legislation through to ban one or multiple different types of firearms. They can step in up to your front door, knock on the door, and expect you to return those weapons to them. And if you do not, you're going to jail. There is no question about it.
And David, I'm sure you remember this too, but after the handgun ban, they rallied and they marched. It was really a silent march. It was too late by then. But, I mean, so many of the shooters were so splintered. They said, oh, they'll never take my gun. They could take the handgun. They'll never take my hand. They'll never get after my gun.
That's right. That's right. People believe that just because the political heat was turned onto one particular section of the shooting community, the other sections of that community, they turned their backs. And they truly divided and they truly conquered the British firearms owner. And it's a deplorable state of affairs. It can never be allowed to happen here. The only protection we have for the Second Amendment is the NRA, and the only protection that the Constitution in its entirety has is the Second Amendment. So without the Second Amendment, the backbone is gone and the rest of the freedoms will fall like a pack of cards.
What was happening in Britain, is that part of the reason you came to the U.S.?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was so disgusted with the erosion of freedoms, the fact that we didn't have a written constitution that was protected, that protected any rights of the British citizen. I just became so frustrated that I looked for other places to go, and the U.S. has a written constitution that guarantees rights of individuals, has a Bill of Rights, and that was what attracted me to the U.S. It's not about guns; it's about freedom.
It is. You're so right. But it's so interesting because you moved here, you own tactical rifles, which makes fine precision rifles. I mean, is that something you always wanted to do? What made you go into that business?
It was always been an interest of mine. It's not something that I did as a money-making venture. They always say if you ever want to make $1 million a year in the firearms industry, you need to start with about $5 million. And I don't follow that particular line of work because of anything else other than it is a passion of mine. And I like what I do. I like the opportunity of speaking to hundreds of God-fearing Americans every year, and these guys appreciate the work that we do. We do extremely high-quality work, and they're on the enthusiast end of the market. So it's a nice thing to do. There's a career that makes money. There's a career that gives you satisfaction, and I think I'm falling in the latter category.
Yeah, it's really, really neat what you do. But, it's also interesting, again, as you point out in your story, they talk about public safety. This is about reducing gun crime. And you talk to the police over there, and they'll look right at you, and they'll tell you, hey, it hasn't done anything.
Oh, quite. I'd go one step further than that. Not has it not done anything. It has made the situation worse.
Absolutely, yes.
It has absolutely polarized the reality of the fact there is no relationship between armed crime and legitimate firearms owners. Once you remove the guns from the legitimate firearms owners, if armed crime still exists, what you're doing is proving the fact that you attacked the wrong group.
Yeah. And I remember when I was over there and I had interviewed this street thug, he said it's not going to make a bit of difference. In fact, he said it's going to make it worse. And he called the gun ban a crock. That's the words he used.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. There are so many illegal firearms that came across and still come across from Eastern Europe through European borders, which have been significantly relaxed because of the unification that they're looking to achieve in Europe, and we're all seeing how well that is going on right now with the drastic situations in Italy, the drastic situations in Greece, the instability in the euro. Countries are talking about pulling out of the euro, and as we have individuals like Hillary Clinton that are trying to increase the unification of our legislation on a worldwide basis, it's become more and more apparent that the unification within Europe itself is not working.
Yeah.
And the increase in armed crime is a byproduct of that unification. The U.S. needs to stand where it is and maintain its integrity in terms of firearms legislation, and not fall to the whims of the European community for firearms unification.
And it's scary because you look at this administration and they're signing on to the UN Small Arms Treaty.
That's exactly it. They're trying to sell us out through the side door.
Yep. Well, I got to tell you, a great story, and the title itself, "It Will Never Happen Here," to me, it's really more of a warning, isn't it?
Absolutely. That I wrote that story to highlight what happens if we turn our back on legislation that is trying to erode our rights. Well, it doesn't matter because it's only a 10-round magazine. Yes, it does. It doesn't matter if they try to pass legislation for the most obscure, ridiculous, fringe firearm that you could possibly imagine. It's all about the same picture. They test the water, they get in through the side door, they erode rights gradually. And if you see in the UK the time scale that it took from 1968 to 1994 to achieve the ban that they want. The guys that wish to erode our rights are incredibly wealthy and incredibly patient.
Absolutely.
And we have to be vigilant, and the vigilance that we have is the guys at the NRA protecting our rights.
Because talk to the folks in England. Once they're gone, they're gone.
They're gone for good. Legislation never comes place to restore rights. Legislation only removes rights.
All right. Thanks so much for taking the time. And thanks for giving us this great perspective, because I think Americans, even if you don't own a gun, you need to know what this is about, because you said it's more than guns. It's about freedom, and it's about our rights.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you talking to me.